Dr. White, pleasure to talk with you.
Yes, sir.
I'm reading a book by Donald Cinema about the Synod of Dort and the canons, and it's basically a collection of papers that have been published by him. He has a chapter in there about church-state entanglements at the Synod of Dort, and it's fascinating to read through because you have civil magistrates who are overseeing the synod and approving certain things, providing guidance as requested by the synod. They're appealing to the government. There was also a political leader who was executed for treason because his support of remonstrance, and so you had a state involvement. State delegates were involved. My question is, I think it's a yes or no, but it may be a no but or a yes if. Is the Synod of Dort an example of sacralism?
Of course. Of course.
Okay.
Oh, of course. Yeah. No. It is painfully clear that the Reformation was magisterial. It was sacral. That's why Fritz Erba was stuck in a hole. That's why executions took place. That's why wars took place. There is, that was the main thing I was communicating to the group that went with me to Germany in 2017 for the Reformation tour. Was, the very first night in Berlin, I told everybody, now I realize most of the men we'll be studying would have never extended the hand of fellowship to us, and in fact would have banished us or maybe even executed us. And the folks that put the tour on, Michael Fallon and his crew, great folks, they pulled me aside after the presentation, and they're like, no one's ever said that before. They had done this tour before. They did it right after us, I think, or had just done it before us. Yeah, had done it before us. And had big names. I could give you the names. I know the names. Big church history names. And they're like, we've never heard anything like that before. And I'm like, well, sorry, then you were being given a caricature of the Reformation, not the Reformation itself. A cartoon version, not the real version. Because it was sacral. And that's why Baptists were still being drowned and executed in England in the 17th century. That continued. And that's why when allegedly Reformed Baptists jump on to giving the government power to determine what's preached and what isn't preached, and what religion is going to be legal and what religion isn't going to be legal, anybody who knows history goes, we really tried that. We really tried hard at it. And for someone like me, who can so deeply appreciate Zwingli and Calvin and the second and third generation reformers and Luther, believe me, many times I sat there in Germany. I remember sitting in the cathedral in Eisleben, where Luther was born in Eisleben and died in Eisleben, but never lived in Eisleben. It's really weird. It's a strange fact of history. He happened to be there to try to mediate some disputes between Lutheran groups. That's when he had a couple of heart attacks and died. But he had been born there, but never lived there. As I sat there, and here are the pulpits that he had preached from, I knew that the final sermons he preached were sadly deeply tinged with gross anti-Jewish polemics. And yet, and so the maturing thing, even for me at that point, is to sit there and to be able to be thankful for what God did through that man, while recognizing the deep flaws that were still his. And I think anybody who gets to the middle of their seventh decade, for those who can't count decades, I'm in my mid-60s, when I look at myself and I realize how flawed I am, one of the big things that just bugs me is how people will, there have been some problems over the past number of years with various men that we could name. What they taught has to be analyzed on the basis of the actual message, not who they are. So, for example, Ravi Zacharias. Okay? Ravi Zacharias taught many true things. But when things came out about him, and almost all of it came out after he died, and man, there is nothing in Scripture about going after people after they're dead. You can't cross-examine people who are going to attack you when you're dead. I just wonder what the future is going to be like with AI and stuff like that. Can you imagine how easy it would be to absolutely destroy someone's reputation after they're dead? You can fake anything. And even now, you can't cross-examine anybody. So, anyway, the point was, I have to look at these men, and I have to be thankful for the truth. I have to be thankful when they saw beyond what they knew in their day. While at the same time recognize, I can't turn them into a caricature of what they really were. When I tell the joke, it's a true story, about preaching from Luther's pulpit. And if you ever heard it, at the beginning of when I started speaking, there's a microphone up there now, obviously. There wasn't in Luther's day. There was a little bit of a buzz that even I could hear. It's called the 60-cycle hum. Everybody who's ever run sound knows all about the 60-cycle hum. But it cleared up. Didn't ruin anything. I go down, I'm talking with some folks afterwards, and I say, hey, did you hear that buzz when I first started speaking? They're like, yeah, it really didn't bother me. Yeah, I said, yeah. Well, but I know what it was. Because, see, Luther's buried directly beneath that pulpit. I mean, if I had stepped up over the pulpit and looked down, I'd be looking at where Luther is buried. Most people don't know that. I said that was Luther spinning in his grave because a Baptist was preaching from his pulpit. And that would make a 60-cycle hum. It would. No two ways about it. He would not have extended his hand of fellowship to me. Now, would he today know what he now knows? Well, I would hope so. But yeah, there has to be this maturity over time. And so I can look at the Synod of Dort. I can be thankful for what the Synod did, but I also know that those same men were persecuting, imprisoning, and executing Baptists at that very same period of time in that very part of Europe. And I can condemn that, and I can say this was wrong and here's why it's wrong. And when I do that today and mention sacralism, the Christless nationalists, start mocking and deriding, and I'm going to sacralism even harder now. I mean, it's hard to take those men seriously. It's hard to take them seriously as historians. But that's what you got to do. Is that helpful at all?
Yes, very. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for your entire ministry. Very helpful to me in my life. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. God bless.